Hello and welcome to Economic Forum, where we discuss various issues affecting our economy in Zimbabwe. These can be issues to do with manufacturing, to do with tourism, agriculture, education, and many other facets of life. We discuss them here and see how they contribute to economic development in Zimbabwe. My name is John Masuku. One of the issues that we discuss is human capital development, and it is important for our human capital to be skilled in various areas, and in particular nowadays with industrial skills, so that we can develop our industry. So the Ministry of Skills Auditing and Development was set up in order to examine what skills we already have and how we can move forward as a country. And we are so excited today to be having the minister himself, Professor Paul Mavima, who is heading this newly formed ministry. We thank you, Professor. So now you are in the Skills Audit and Development Ministry. What are you mandated to do and develop?
Thank you, John. It's always a pleasure for me to speak on Economic Forum. The new ministry of Skills Audit and Development, as the name implies, is a double-pronged mandate. The first aspect is the audit aspect, which basically is a discovery aspect, to say, one, what skills do we have as a nation, which are related to where we want to go as a country. And in this particular case, it's our intermediate strategies that get us to Vision 2030, which are NDS 1, which is currently running, and NDS 2, which is going to be running from next year until 2030, have been fully implemented and are contributing to that Vision 2030, which was articulated clearly by His Excellency with specific targets. So we need to understand that as a nation, what skills do we have that will contribute to that, and what skills don't we have? In other words, and I don't want to be negative, we are looking at what gaps exist
in our the future.
In our skills inventory. So that's the discovery aspect, that's the audit aspect. The development aspect is where we then make recommendations to say, how do we meet the skills requirements that we should have? Where exactly are we lacking, and what programs should we put in place so that we are availing those skills? You may actually find out that once the discovery is done, it might be a question of saying we are not having enough people prepared at the basic education level who will then transition into higher and tertiary education institutions that then polish up these skills, be it polytechnics or our universities, producing the necessary skills in specific areas to give us the human capital that we need. Let me give you an example. The whole idea of STEM, which is science, right, technology, engineering, and mathematics. If we are not producing enough at the basic education level that is preparing our learners at primary and secondary level, it means we are going to have shortages of those students that will pursue these skills areas at tertiary level. Yes. So what we have to do through the discovery process is to say, primary and secondary education, is it sufficiently placed to give us a conveyor belt of learners when we need them at the higher levels of tertiary education. But what we are also doing is to look at Vision 2030 in totality. What are the specific targets that have been outlined by His Excellency, but also by our NDS1, even the whole idea of devolution, issues of $12 billion mining sector, issues of $8 billion agricultural sector. What about tourism? What we want to achieve there? And thinking back and saying, do we have the human capital to drive these targets? Yes. We are also looking at that.
Yes. You mentioned STEM, which is very important.
Yes.
And in the 2018 survey, which maybe was on a small scale because it wasn't under a ministry such as the one that you have, was very, very important.
Yeah.
Just to summarize that one before we end this segment.
2018 there was a skills audit that was done, and it was very poignant in terms of what it revealed. We have serious shortages from that baseline which we are now using. We have a serious, there was indication that we have serious shortages in almost all the areas related to STEM.
I think we'll do justice, Minister. I think you've summarized that what was discovered was that there were serious shortages.
Yes.
When we come back in the second segment, you are then going to unveil what really was found out during that audit and what is the way forward. That's the Minister of Skills Auditing and Development, Professor Paul Mavima. We are discussing the mandate of the ministry and the auditing that is taking place, how far they've gone, and in fact is going to give us just an overview of who they've interviewed and the basics or the preliminary findings that they have. So join us in the second segment of Economic Forum. We are now in the second segment of Economic Forum, where today we are discussing skills auditing and development with the Minister of that ministry, Professor Paul Mavima. And Professor, in the first segment, you did say that the 2018 audit actually revealed a lot of gaps, especially in the areas of STEM. And you'd like to elaborate on that and what is being done.
In engineering, for example, we found out that we had a gap of 94%. In applied and natural sciences, we found that we had a gap of 97%. In agriculture, which is really the mainstay of this economy, we found that we had a gap of 88%. In medical and health sciences, we found that we had a gap of 95%. And in applied arts, a lot of people think that we may have oversupply in terms of applied arts and humanities. We found that we had a gap of 18%. And so that gives us an average of about 62% gap, which means that the skills base for this nation is 38%. And remember, this is one of the most educated societies in Africa in terms of basic education. We have the highest literacy rate, but still, in terms of the skills that produce goods and services were still found lacking from that baseline. Yes. There's already a lot that has been done in terms of covering these gaps.
Before you tell us about the lot that is being done to cover these gaps, an ordinary person will say, but why would you say there are those gaps in those areas? Yet we know that people who have qualified in certain aspects of engineering, humanities and others, and they are not employed, or they're told that we have no jobs for you. I think it's important to mention that as you talk about the skills that industry will be looking at and those that are coming from this tertiary institution.
In most of these cases, indeed we don't have the engineers that we need to the levels that we should be having engineers. In other cases, it's a question of the product that is coming out. Are they sufficiently skilled to meet the requirements of industry? That then talks to the specific structuring of the instruction that is being given, whether it's producing the skills, the specific skills that can be deployed in industry to the satisfaction of industry. So there are two elements there. There is real shortages in terms of human bodies, and in most of these, especially STEM areas, there are serious problems with shortages of human bodies, partly because we haven't trained enough of those human bodies, but secondly because we have not retained those we have trained. They have been snatched. Unfortunately, the environment, the economic environment that has prevailed for the past 2 decades, especially related to the sanctions that we have suffered as a nation, have meant that people who we have trained have left the country. The brain drain has been very serious, leading to shortages in our own situation, in our own economy. Part of what we are also saying is, in order for us to get to where we want to go, what is the makeup of the skills that will give us enough innovation, enough entrepreneurship, so that we can really propel our economy to where we want to go. So it's a combination of elements that then leads us to this 62% gap, which we then work with, and then we say, because of this, we have this shortage of the specific skill. So there are a number of ways to look at what we are driving at. It's issues of, do we have the people? Do we have the specific skills being imparted in the people that we are producing? And how much of those people that we have trained have we retained?
Very, very important point. You mentioned the skills flight to the diaspora. Very briefly, are you also auditing them to say, we have these skills in America, in the UK, in South Africa, and we want them back?
Yes.
This is how we're going to lure them to come back home.
We have both in terms of the discovery, which is the audit. It's part and parcel of what we are doing. Just an inventory of our citizens in various areas, skills areas, who are out there.
In fact, there are many honorable ministers that at times we wonder how they can come back because they are shining, all over the world, and yet some of the things that they're supposed to be doing. We are going to continue with our discussion in the third and final segment of Economic Forum with our guest, who is Professor Paul Mavima, the Minister of Skills Auditing and Development. So join us then. We are now in the third and final segment of Economic Forum, where today we're discussing skills auditing and development with the minister in that ministry, Professor Paul Mavima. The other issue, Professor Mavima, is the issue of misalignment, where students or graduates come from the university and they don't quite fit into the industry. Either the equipment they're supposed to be using is backward, or what they were training with at their various institutions does not fit what is now available in industry. And hence, some industries won't take them, and we get surprised that so has got electrical engineering, chemical engineering, but they are roaming the streets and not doing anything. How are you addressing that dilemma?
That speaks to the need for much more interface between our training institutions and industry. They should always be talking together instead of talking past each other. There is need for that interface. Part of also our problem is the fact that our industry has not been doing very well, again, going back to the prevailing economic situation, and therefore there may not have been sufficient opportunities for students who are being trained to be placed in industry for internship opportunities. That would actually provide this ongoing interface, which would lead to proper alignment between industry and our tertiary institutions. We cannot overemphasize the need for this communication to take place. In our tertiary institutions, there also has to be a continuous scanning of the environment to see the new trends in technology and updating their own technology and infrastructure, so that in their labs, in their workshops, they have adapted to the new technology. Right now, the issue of artificial intelligence, for example, has to be brought into our tertiary institutions. There is need for us to really invest heavily so that we are actually keeping pace with the changes that are taking place in the world, so that our learners or our students are encountering this technology in their institutions, and then going into industry and also encountering the same. Again, overall, as Zimbabweans, we really need to think in terms of how do we come together to move our economy forward. As Zimbabweans, let's see how we can move our economy back to vibrance that will address the whole idea of opportunity for the skills that we are training. And on that basis, we'll begin even to lure those who have gone to the diaspora to come back and contribute, maybe even remotely, but some will then choose to relocate to Zimbabwe.
In carrying out this skills audit, what are you doing to ensure that there are no gaps left in the system, so that at the end of the audit, when you present your report, it will not be weak in the sense that you left out some of these important areas that you're talking about?
I will tell you that in terms of our methodology, we are going to be much more robust and much more comprehensive. You will realize that the 2018 audit really focused on the higher level skills, especially related to the skills that are produced at universities and at polytechnics. This time we are going to look overall at the skills that are needed to move the entire economy forward, including the lower level skills. We are going to be asking, for example, whether this country has enough well-prepared plumbers, who have also become very important because they are going to be participants in the development of irrigation.
And they're actually being recruited in other countries.
Yes. So we are going to be looking at even the lower level skills and seeing how they can be produced, which means that we are not just looking at the universities and the primary and secondary school levels, but we are also looking at the intermediate institutions that train our human capital, including the technical and vocational institutions, to say, are they well positioned to provide the skills that are going to be needed for effective implementation of programs at ward level, at community level, at provincial level, so that we can move the entire economy forward.
Well, we'd like to thank you very much for coming to Economic Forum. That's the Minister of Skills Auditing and Development, Professor Paul Mavima, who has been explaining about the exercise that the newly formed ministry is doing in order to identify critical skills that are important for the development of Zimbabwe. And he has mentioned that even at a very basic level, those skills are very important, and over and above STEM, they are also going to be looking at those skills. If you would like to get in touch with us on this program, you can do so on the numbers that are showing on your screen. If you'd like to engage with us, you can also do that on the social media platforms that are flashing on your screen. If you have missed some of the episodes of Econ Forum, and also an episode such as this one about skills development, you can actually watch them on our YouTube channel, which is Economic Forum Zimbabwe. So, on behalf of our guest, Professor Paul Mavima, the Minister of Skills Auditing and Development, and the production crew, this is John Masugu wishing you happy viewing.